The Rockpile Podcast, the show where journeys are told, challenges are embraced, and victories are celebrated. Touchdown! This is your platform for authentic conversations with athletes, coaches, teams, business leaders, and so much more. Every episode dives deep into the highs, the lows, and the obstacles that shape incredible stories of resilience and triumph. Ready? Break! Whether you're chasing your dreams, overcoming adversity, or simply looking for inspiration, you've come to the right place. So, let's climb together. This is the Rock Pile.
Welcome to the Rock Pile tonight. Tonight on the Rock Pile, we'll see this might be the last one of the Chalk Talk podcast here as I break down the national championship game on Monday night between Ohio State and Notre Dame. I'll talk a little bit about the two semifinal games from last week. Not too much to talk about between the two games. I thought the Notre Dame-Penn State was the best game, and the Texas game was okay for a little bit. And then, as expected, Ohio State pulled away in that game. I don't know if it was really as close as 28-14, but it was 14-14 at one point. If you're listening on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, give me a like, give me a follow. If you got any questions for me tonight, any comments about the upcoming game or the semifinal games, let me know. Be happy to try to answer as many questions as I can. Tomorrow, there'll be a press release. I have a really, really big show coming the end of January. It's going to be all on mental health and sports. I have two administrators from Colgate University going to join my sister and I the end of January. So I'll post that. Look for that all across social media and much more around the Mohawk Valley area. So without further ado, let's get into these. I want to get into first that Notre Dame-Penn State game. I don't know. This game was okay. I thought it was back and forth. There was really no offense at all the first half. I was really surprised because I thought Penn State dominated this game, and it came down late in the game. Drew Aller made the costly mistake as a quarterback, and even in high school, you tell your kid, don't throw across your body. He threw it across his body to the other side. It was picked off, and that was the game-sealing win for Notre Dame. And the knock's going to be James Franklin still can't win a big game. I don't know. I mean, you get the two playoff games, with James Franklin. You had to win over Boise State and SMU, but I don't think people are really going to count that game as either one of those as big games because they were expected to win that game against those two teams. Now, I think the Notre Dame game would have been a huge win for Franklin to get back and play for a national championship against another shot at the Buckeyes. But then I think the knock would have been if Ohio State were to beat them, which I think they would if they played a second time, would be, well, James Franklin can't beat Ohio State, and now his record against, Ohio State is 0 for the last century. And I posted this week James Franklin's records, and I was joking with a colleague at work who's a big Penn State fan, and I don't know if he's watching tonight. But James Franklin was like 1-15 against top 15, maybe like 1-15. It was horrendous, his record against top 25 teams and top 5 teams. I think James Franklin, just like Lane Kiffin, who, again, I think it was a disappointing season for Lane, is James Franklin's going to benefit from any team in the country going forward with the college football playoff. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, it's no knock to James Franklin. I think Franklin's a great football coach. But he can't beat Michigan. He can't beat Ohio State. So if you lose 2 games every year in the Big Ten, you're in the playoff. Now you are. But the prior so many years, he didn't get in, and that was the knock. He can't get through those 2 games. Now, from watching that Notre Dame-Penn State game, listen, Notre Dame's battling a ton of injuries. And we'll talk about that, and I'll talk about that when I get into the Ohio State matchup on Monday night. I thought the biggest moment of the night for Notre Dame is when Steve Angeli, the backup quarterback for Notre Dame, came in right before the half, led them down the field for a Mitch Jeter field goal that made it 10-3 going into halftime. I said this at one point in that game. I said, I think that if Angeli comes in and plays well, and I think he came down, I think he was like 6 for 7 throwing the ball. I said, they may have to go with Angeli the second half because Riley Leonard, I was like, if he's got to throw the ball to beat Penn State, it's not happening. No way is it going to happen. He went through a concussion protocol and he came back the second half. He had a couple of nice drives. They come down, they win the game. The rest is history. And he finished 15 to 23. Okay numbers, 223 yards, a touchdown. He did have the 2 picks. Luckily, Notre Dame defensively, bailed him out a little bit. But I think the multiple injuries, Notre Dame's really banged up front on the offensive line. And one thing I'll say this on Penn State, the 2 tailbacks were really good. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, the 2 backs who, by the way, are coming back next year, which is even scarier. Andrew Eller is next year for Penn State. I think if Penn State had weapons on the perimeter, right? Instead of Tyler Warren, the All-American tight end, who's going to be a first-round pick, he'll be a top 25, maybe top 10 pick in the draft that comes up, they didn't throw the ball to anybody on the perimeter. I mean, the way that they disguised and found ways to get Tyler Warren the football, they were really just dip and dump to the both backs out of the backfield, who, by the way, both backs almost were 2,000-yard rushers for Penn State. Abdul Carter was the best player on the field with one shoulder for Penn State. He was the best player, I thought, on the field in that game. Hands down, he's going to be a first-round draft pick for Penn State. The other thing I want to say is this. The hype coming into that game for Drew Aller, who, by the way, I thought played really good late in the year for Penn State. I thought he struggled a little bit at the beginning of the year, learning that Nicky's offense. And then I think late in the year and even the 2 playoff games, I thought he played well. They really relied on the run game and a really good defense. And, midway through the season on this podcast, I said I thought that Penn State's defense and the strong run game, they could win a national championship. And they were a game away from that. I think the hype coming into that game against Notre Dame for Drew Aller was he's already declared he's coming back. But some scouts were saying that if Penn State wins and he plays well, he may end up being one of the top quarterbacks off the draft board, and he may declare for the NFL. Well, that didn't happen because I thought the lights were too big. I thought he really struggled. I thought he had some open receivers downfield. He missed some open receivers downfield. I didn't think he played well for them. So I thought the stage may have been too bright, and maybe the pressure was too bright. But again, they get off to a 10-0 lead. Then it's 10-3, and then next thing you know, we got a little bit of offense, in the second half, and then Mitch Jeter kicks, the game-winning field goal to beat Penn State. Now, listen, Notre Dame, I've said this the entire year, and I'll talk about it when I break down the national title game. The job that Marcus Freeman has done, and I think the Riley Leonard experience this year, that whole experiment with him coming in, he threw the ball more when he was at Duke last year than he's thrown it this year. And coming in this year to a brand new offense, with Notre Dame, and he was a little bit banged up during the year. They're really a run-first team. They want to pound the ball between the tackles. They want to run quarterback isos, quarterback powers, quarterback counters. And in college, it's tough to stop because you got more guys in the box. I didn't think they'd be able to run the ball against Penn State to win that game. I mean, again, Riley Leonard made some throws late in that game. I think Penn State gave it away more than Notre Dame earned it. But again, Notre Dame has found a way all year in these games. They have found a way all year to get to the finish line, keep it close. They don't make mistakes. They're well coached. Marcus Freeman is say he's a rising star. I think he is a star in college football. And I think when Brian Kelly left, the whole knock was, well, Brian Kelly can't win a national championship. He can't elevate Notre Dame to where it needs to be. Let's go to LSU. Marcus Freeman comes in, and he has won that locker room over. Those kids play really hard for him. And like the national championship game, and again, I keep saying I'm going to get there. I am going to get there in a minute, is I have been back and forth on this because, again, Notre Dame was a team a month ago. I said, if they get in the dance, they get in this 12-team playoff, their style of play reminds me of guess who? I know you're going to laugh when I tell you this. It reminds me of Michigan's team from a year ago and even 2 years ago. And all I can hear in my head is Gus Johnson 2 years ago when Michigan played at Ohio State. And the knock was, let's make J.J. McCarthy beat you because he can't throw the football. And all I can hear is Gus Johnson saying, and they said the kid couldn't throw. The kid couldn't throw. And I think J.J. threw 3 touchdowns, and Michigan won that game. And the way I look at this Notre Dame team is they're really built in the trenches. It's next man up mentality because they got a lot of injuries up front. They run the football. They play really good defense, and they really have a quarterback that is a winner. And I think that's what J.J. McCarthy brought to Michigan, right? They were run first, play really good defense. They're going to stop the run on defense, and they're going to get after the quarterback, and they're not going to make many mistakes. And last year, a year ago, Michigan didn't make many mistakes and won the national championship and has beaten Ohio State for 4 years in a row. But we won't get into that yet, right? Because I always talk about that when I break down this game. So the other thing is I do want to talk a little bit about this Ohio State-Texas game because I think for me, I'm not a huge – everybody knows I'm not a huge Ohio State guy. I'm a Big Ten guy. I still don't know if I can find myself rooting for Ohio State, even though, as I've bragged continuously on this show, for people that don't follow me, I'm a Michigan fan. My wife's a diehard Ohio State fan, and we argue all football season, and I have bragging rights in the family, but she's going to probably have bragging rights when they win the national championship on Monday night. So I got to live with that. But then I can say, well, we won it last year. We beat – okay, I won't get into that. But I think one of the things I'm impressed with the most is both those teams, especially Ryan Day. I put up on Twitter not long ago, I said, if I was Ryan Day, win or lose, if I win the national championship or if I lose, I put my middle finger up and I say, I'm out. I'm out. I'm going to the NFL, whether it's as an offensive coordinator or there's a lot of NFL jobs open, and I'm sure Ryan Day is going to get a look. I keep hearing Steve Sarkisian's getting a look for the Cowboys. But why would Ryan Day want to keep coming back and dealing with all the BS that he's got to deal with, the death threats to his family because he hasn't beaten Michigan? He's got a Michigan problem, right? He's on the verge of winning a national championship. And, oh, by the way, they've been dominant in the playoff. Like, it almost reminds you of UConn last year that cruised to the national championship in basketball, where I think they beat everybody by like 20 points. It wasn't even close. These games Ohio State are playing are boring. Like the Texas game, 28-14, you'd say, oh, well, the game was close for a little bit. But did anybody really think for 2 minutes, I didn't, that Texas had a chance to beat Ohio State? Like, did anybody think to themselves as they're watching that game, I think Texas has a shot? I never did. Not once. Not once. And my wife and I were watching the entire game, and I kept saying to her the whole entire time, don't panic. Don't panic. They're not going to lose. Texas is going to find a way to blow it. And Texas got close. And Quinn Ewers, like I've said all season long, Archie Manning should have been the quarterback for Texas. You can argue and say the play call by Sark down on the goal line, down on the 2-yard line was a bad call. Probably was. But I get why he ran that. And if you listen to some of the interviews from Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, who said they were in their big package where everything's inside. The meat of the Ohio State defense was bunched inside to try to take it away. So how do you beat that? Well, you get out on a perimeter. The only problem is Ohio State's got a guy by the name of Caleb Downs that nobody has. And if you go back and watch the play and watch Caleb Downs come from his safety spot, split 2 defenders, and make a play in the backfield, you're not going to see that by many teams in college football. But Ohio State is really good. They have the best talent roster in college football. I know people are tired of me saying that, but you got to deal with it when you watch them play. And Urban Meyer and Nick Saban said this best this week on a bunch of shows throughout the week. When you watch Ohio State play at all their positions, they got NFL guys. Not just they have NFL guys. They have NFL starters. So think about the receiving corps. Jeremiah Smith, the All-American who would go probably 1 or 2 in the draft this year if he can come out as a freshman, had 1 catch for 3 yards, and Ohio State won by 2 touchdowns. Just think of that. 1 catch for 3 yards And you got to tip your hat to Sark in the defense, because I think that the game plan was, let's put 2 safeties back. Let's put one over Jeremiah Smith. Let somebody else beat you. Well, they got Emeka Egbuka, who's going to be a first-round pick, who's probably going to start in the NFL. Cardell Tate is probably going to get drafted too, unless he comes back. I think he has the option to come back. They got 2 tailbacks that are just under 1,000 yards rushing, in Quinshawn Junkins and Travion Henderson, that would probably be starting in the NFL. And then you got Will Howard, a journeyman kind of. I'm not a huge Will Howard guy, never was. All he's got to do is manage games. He just can't be like the Oregon game where he screwed it up, or the Michigan game, he throws the interception down on his own goal line. Michigan scores. Like, he screwed it up. Okay. If he doesn't screw it up, and he hasn't yet, so Ohio State fans, I'm not going to jinx you, but he has not screwed things up, and they've been dominant. So I would probably say this: just manage the game, Will Howard, and they have a really good chance to win this national championship game. Now, Quinn Ewers, I think he held this team back. He didn't look great in the pocket, not much velocity on his throws, took a lot of sacks. I think he should have went to Archie Manning. And even down on the goal line, right? He put Archie in for the one trick play. And I say trick play, but it was like the 4th down play where they thought they were going to punt it. And then I think it was the tight end or a skill guy, gets under center, and they shotgun it to Arch. Arch runs it. He gets tackled, and they fumble, but they review it and say he was down. It really looked like it was a fumble. Arch is 6'4", 220 pounds, or 230. You're down on the goal line. Why not bring him in? And I'm not going to question Sark, because I think Sark's one of the best offensive coordinators in the game. I'm not really sold on Sark as a head coach, because I think Texas played a really soft SEC schedule. And I know people say the SEC, well, the Big Ten was better this year than the SEC, but we can argue that another time. But I will question Sark, as I say, he was really loyal to Quinn Ewers. And many people, and again, if you get online and you look at all these articles and you look at Texas fans, did loyalty cost him a shot to play for a national championship? Because Texas has a lot of 5-stars. They're as talented up front. The roster's as talented as anybody's in the country. I probably would say Ohio State 1, and I probably would say Texas 1A. Maybe you disagree with me, but I think he's always recruited well. Weak SEC schedule. They lost both times to Georgia this year, and then they lose to Ohio State. I really believe that if he would have went to Arch earlier in the year, I think they would have been a little bit more of a threat. But again, he was really loyal to Quinn Ewers, and Ewers was banged up throughout his career at Texas, and he just declared to go to the NFL. And I think personally he should have came back. And there was rumors that there was a Big Ten team who I believe was Oregon. Some think it was Ohio State, which is where he transferred from. He was like the 3rd string quarterback for Ohio State. But many people thought that the Big Ten, somebody in the Big Ten offered him like $6 million to come back. I think he should have came back somewhere, because I don't think he's anywhere near. He's not going to last in the NFL. He's going to hold a clipboard in the NFL. There's no way he's going to get time. I don't think he's got the arm strength at all. So I thought he would have benefited for coming back one more year. But again, credit Ohio State and, for moving on. So let's go to this. I want to get into I was trying to look at some storylines that I thought were, coming up with the Notre Dame game. And I got a handful of them for you. Some of them I think are pretty obvious. The Marcus Freeman played at Ohio State. He's still got a lot of Ohio State connection. I think that's the obvious one. But I want to get into a couple here. The one loss that Notre Dame had that nobody's going to ever let them live it down, and that was to Northern Illinois, right? NAU. And then they went on to won, 13 or 14 in a row. But then you look at, that's a really bad loss for Notre Dame, right? It was a really bad loss. And even after that loss, there were people saying, fire Marcus Freeman, he's in over his head, blah, blah, blah. That's what always happens, right? When you lose a game, they want to fire the head coach. And then even when you win games, they want to fire the head coach at any level. But then you have Ohio State. So that was a really bad loss for Notre Dame. Well, Ohio State had a really bad loss to Michigan. They were a 3-touchdown favorite against Michigan in Columbus. and lost to a team that had no passing game, had no business being in that game. If they were to play again, Ohio State destroys them because Ohio State's playing real life. So I think one of the storylines for me is both teams with bad losses, both teams have rebounded. Marcus Freeman's team rebounds and wins 13 in a row. Ryan Day rebounds from people saying he's going to get fired. Fire Ryan Day. He can't win the big game, which is Michigan, blah, 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 blah. Now he's on the verge of winning a national championship. So I got to give him credit for that. So that was one storyline. Both battling through adversity, horrible losses. Now they're both in playing for the national championship, which I can see the Ohio State because, again, I thought they were the best team all year. I said it in August. I said they're the best team in the country. They're the most talented. I picked them in August. But then as the season went on with Notre Dame after the Northern Illinois game, I said, how do you win football games? You win football games by being able to run the football, playing really physical up front, which they do on both sides, offense and defensive lines. They're well coached. They don't make a lot of mistakes. Those all translate into winning games. And that's how Notre Dame has got there. And I think, again, they have one of the best up-and-coming coaches in college football. Marcus Freeman, who I just read on Twitter the other day, the Bears want to interview him. Now, I think I don't think he's a pro guy. Maybe that's what he wants to do, but I don't think he leaves Notre Dame because I think he's built something special there. And I got to give Ryan Day credit. And I'm not a Ryan Day guy. I think Ryan Day, win or lose, should middle finger and say, you know what, Buckeyes? You're giving me all this crap because I can't beat Ohio State. I just won a national championship. Good luck finding another coach. I'm out. I could see that happening. I said it last year before the season started for Michigan. And the Sports Watch guys can back me up on this. I said, win or lose, at the end of the season, Jim Harbaugh is out at Michigan and he's going to the NFL. Why put up with all the nonsense? Why put up with, well, okay, they signed, so they cheated, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and I say this every year. They had better players than everybody else, which is why they won. But whatever, I won't get into that whole cheating thing. So I said that last year, and I'm not saying it happens with Ryan Day. Ryan Day will probably be back. I hope he's back, being a Michigan fan, right? So maybe he can go 0-5 because now he's got to come to Ann Arbor next year against a Michigan team that's going to be a hell of a lot better than they were a year ago. But we'll see. The other thing is Notre Dame chose Riley Leonard over Will Howard. And if you think about that, now these teams with transfer quarterbacks are both playing in the national championship game. And I think both quarterbacks fit each other's style, right? Chip Kelly wants to throw the ball out in space, wants to throw the football, makes sense, get the ball to those skill kids. If you look at Notre Dame, they're built on toughness. They want to run the football. What's that translate to? Riley Leonard. So, I think it's both a match made in heaven for both these teams, how they're built. And the big knock's going to be, talk about it, is can Riley Leonard, if they have to throw the football, can they beat Ohio State? Well, that's been the thing all through these playoffs. If Riley Leonard has to throw the football, can Notre Dame win games? Can we just stop for a minute and say this? You don't have to throw the football to win games. Yes, it helps. Don't get me wrong. It helps. But if you can have success running the football, be creative, play really good defense, don't turn the ball over, be really good in the red zone, you can win games without throwing the football. Now, I say without throwing football. I'm not saying Navy, Army, Air Force where they don't throw the football. I'm saying, does he have to throw it 40 times to beat Ohio State? I don't think they do. Some people will say, well, if they get behind early, if it's 10-0, a couple touchdowns, can they come back? I believe they can. So I think the quarterback stories are really interesting. And I also think, again, the Marcus Freeman played for Ohio State, I think is another great storyline. A Buckeye playing against a team he played for, was a linebacker for Ohio State. He's still got a lot of Ohio State connections. And I think the big piece for me with this whole thing really comes down to how much that both these teams, and if you listen to Ryan Day, he's like, the Jack Sawyer thing. He's a Columbus kid, grew up rooting for the Buckeyes, and he has the scoop and score. And I still can't get out of my head when the whole flag thing with Michigan, Ohio State, and Jack Sawyer's sitting there and he's got one of his coaches, with two hands, and he's holding on to him tight, and Ryan Day is sitting there just watching everything develop. And I'm not knocking Jack Sawyer at all. I'm not a big fan of him. But I do think the closeness of this group for the Buckeyes, they all came back, and I know money talks, and people will say, and it's true, they spent $20 to $22 million to keep this roster intact. And every one of those Ohio State guys said it when they got beat to Michigan a year ago, we're coming back. Because the thing at Ohio State, like if you beat Michigan, you get a pair of gold pants. That's like the big thing at Ohio State. Jack Sawyer doesn't have a pair of gold pants and he's not getting them, which means he's never beaten Ohio State. So this senior class and fifth-year seniors at Ohio State have to live with they've never beaten Michigan, but they can have bragging rights to say, you know what, guys, at the alumni parties where they're drinking beer and shooting the shit, can say, you know what, Jim, I never beat Michigan, but guess what? We won that national championship, and I'll do this. Great job. So all these Ohio State came back to win the Big Ten, which they didn't, play for a Big Ten championship, which they didn't, and beat Michigan, they didn't. Now they get a chance to redeem themselves. And again, credit the entire team. Credit Ryan Day, kept this team together when most of the media, including some Ohio State fans that wrote them off and said, no chance. They have no chance in the playoffs. Tennessee's going to smoke them. They've been pretty damn impressive through these playoffs. It's been huge, I think. So let's give a few things here. I want to just talk about Notre Dame first, because I'm not really sure if anybody's given Notre Dame a chance to win this game. I'm going to give them a chance to win this game. Will it happen? I don't know. This is the first time since 1988 that Notre Dame won their last national championship, and that was the Tony Rice, Lou Holtz days. And I think they got to keep it the same. I think they have to, exactly what I said, be physical up front, be able to run the football. They have to play really, really good defense against Ohio State. And that back end, and I say the back end, the secondary for Notre Dame is one of the best secondaries in the country. They play a lot of man coverage. I don't think you can beat Ohio State playing man coverage, but Notre Dame is who they are. They're going to play man coverage. Xavier Watts is an All-American in the back end that plays safety. They only give up 161 yards passing, which is the second best. Ohio State's the best pass defense team in the country. And I think if it comes down to kicking, Mitch Jeter, the kicker, started off the year rough for Notre Dame. He's 7 of his 8 here down the stretch, including the game-winning field goal against Penn State. And Jaden Fielden, who for Ohio State, he's 3 for his last 6, including 2 that he missed against Michigan. So if it comes down to the special teams, I would give the edge to Notre Dame. And I think the other thing for Notre Dame is this. They're banged up. They're Riley, I'm looking at my notes here. Riley Mix, who's the D lineman, is out. He leads the team in sacks. Their starting left tackle is out. Jeremiah Love, who's the tailback that came in on a bum leg, is banged up. I think he's going to give it a go with a brace on. But again, I think the Marcus Freeman mentality is it's next man up. And that's been so great about Notre Dame. Listen, as a Michigan fan, I hate 2 teams. I hate Ohio State and I hate Notre Dame. And the Notre Dame coach is an Ohio State alum. So, it can't get worse for Michigan fans. I wish it could end in a tie, but it can't. Some people are saying, well, they wish the game would get canceled. They're going to play. I don't want it to get canceled. I want them to play. So, it's really, really tough sledding for a Michigan fan watching this game. Notre Dame has become likable. And I know the brand, you got 2 really big brands with Ohio State and Notre Dame. I mean, from a marketing perspective, the brand perspective, these are the 2 biggest brands, 2 of the biggest brands in sports, right? Ohio State and Notre Dame, 2 of the biggest brands in sports. And I find myself, and I can't believe it, but I find myself rooting for Notre Dame. I love Marcus Freeman. They played his halftime speech, which I thought was great. And I'm one of these weirdos that, because I'm a night owl, but I'm one of these weirdos who I like to watch press conferences. Like when a coach gets a job, I like to watch their introductory press conference. I like to see how they address the media. I like to see how they handle questions. I like to see some of the tough questions sometimes. And I can't get out of my head when Brian Kelly left, who, by the way, Marcus Freeman was the defensive coordinator for Brian Kelly. The athletic director was in the locker room talking to the team. And the athletic director goes, and I want to introduce you to your new head coach. And Marcus Freeman comes in, and the locker room went absolutely bonkers. Like everybody was so fired up. They were so excited when they heard Marcus Freeman was the head coach. He's a player's coach. And that to me is awesome. When you have kids that go out and play their asses off for you, even when they've been down, like they were down to Penn State. They've been down throughout the year. They lose to Northern Illinois, who, if they play 10 times, and I know you hear this speech all the time, right? If they play 10 times, Notre Dame beats them 9 out of 10 times. It just so happened they didn't play well that day in South Bend, and they lost. And Marcus Freeman rallied this team. And if you watch the body language and you listen to his players talk, it's like, wow, they're likable. They're not arrogant. They're good kids. They play hard for their head coach. And I firmly believe that even if they get behind to Ohio State, they could be losing 40-0 Monday night. That team's still going to play their ass off and fight for their head coach. And I'll tell you what, as any coach at any level, youth sports, high school, you name it, if your team plays hard for you, no matter what the score is, that's telling me something about that head coach. And you could say the same thing for Ryan Day, right? They lose to Michigan the whole season. People are saying, no, can't happen. They're done. Write them off. They have looked really impressive. Chip Kelly's got that offense flying around. Jim Knowles' defense is one of the best defenses in the country on all fronts. You can't score on them in the red zone. So I got to give Ohio State a lot of credit. And I'm going to give both coaches a lot of credit. Ohio State, they're on a mission. Tennessee, they hammered. I thought that game would have been closer against Tennessee. The Oregon game was never even close. I know 41-21, but both those two games, they put up 40 points, and the game was done by late in the first quarter. Oregon got some scores late in that game that to get to 21 points. So I'm anxious to see how Ohio State starts against Notre Dame. Some interesting numbers. Ohio State's averaging 35.8 points a game. They're averaging about 7 yards a play. And when you look at Ohio State and you watch them play, sometimes I say to myself, I don't know, how do you stop them? Like, again, I go back to Texas. They shut down Jeremiah Smith, which is a tough task. 1 catch for 3 yards. And he's a freak athlete. But then they just got so many weapons. They got between Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. They're two backs that are just at about 1,000 yards rushing each. I think one's at 994, the other one's at like 990. So you got almost 2,000 yard rushers. You got arguably the best receiving core in college football. You got the best defense in the country. How the hell do you beat that? Like, what do you do? What do you scheme up? How do you do it? If there's any coaches watching me right now, whether you're a high school coach, I don't even care what you are. You can be a Pop Warner coach. Put in the comments, how would you stop Ohio State? I think the only way you stop Ohio State is you have to be able to run the football. If you can run the ball, keep them off the field, you can't get into 2nd and 12, 3rd and long. You just can't do that against the Buckeyes because you're going to get in that shotgun and drop back the pass. And that front for Ohio State is too damn good. And Ohio State is the best defensive team in the country. They're really good against the pass. But the thing that's impressive me the most, they're really good in the red zone. And if you watch that game against Texas, I think you heard the guy, I think it was it, I don't even remember now if it was Herbie calling the game or if it was Greg McElroy calling that game. I forget who was on the call for that. Oh no, actually it was, I think it was Fowler. I think it was. I think it was Fowler and Herb Street. And Fowler's like, you just can't score against this team in the red zone. Like, what do you do? And remember, Texas had it first and goal from the 2. First play, run play up the middle, couldn't get it. Second down play, couldn't get it. Third down, let's try to run east to west. They lose 10 yards. Fourth down, incomplete pass, and the rest is history. And that defensive front with Caleb Downs, this is what I think is going to happen. I think that Jim Knowles is going to put 8 or 9 guys in the box. And he's going to say, Riley Leonard beat me. I don't think he's going to let Riley Leonard and this Notre Dame team run the football to beat him. Now, again, I say that. Michigan ran for 160 yards against Ohio State. That's the most any teams ran all year. Michigan had no passing game. Played really good defense. Again, I still don't know why Ohio State just pounded the ball between the tackles against Michigan. It was right in the heart of the defense and horrible game plan, right? I think Jim Knowles, who again, give him credit, the defense has played well enough the last 2-3 years, really, to win a national championship. This game is going to rely, again, and you feel like you repeat yourself sometimes in these games, because I said this in the Penn State game. I said, which quarterback do I trust the most? And I'm not going to lie, I picked Penn State. I said, give me Drew Aller, because, again, I said, if Notre Dame has to throw the football, they can't do it. Drew Aller can. Well, guess what? It was kind of the flip side. Drew Aller couldn't. Riley Leonard made some throws. Notre Dame beat Penn State. Jim Knowles is going to load the box. But I got a hunch on something. And again, I got all my notes, and I'm looking I know who I picked, and everybody who's followed me over the last 2 months knows I picked Ohio State to win the title. So you know where I'm going to pick. The more I listen and the more I go back and forth on this game, I can't get out of my head the way this Notre Dame team is built. Can they line up and pound the football? I personally think, what if Notre Dame comes out and throws the football? Again, all I can hear in my head is Gus Johnson 2 years ago, Michigan in Columbus, when Gus says, and they said he couldn't throw the ball. And he's talking about J.J. McCarthy, who threw for like 200 and something yards and 2 touchdowns against Ohio State. Nobody thinks Riley Leonard can throw the ball to beat Ohio State. Now, I'm not saying that he's got to throw the ball to beat Ohio State, but what if they come out throwing? If they come out throwing the football, that's just going to open up the run game even more for Notre Dame. And now if they can throw it and they're running the ball, Ohio State's got to be on their heels saying, I don't know what to do. Now, the flip side of that is going to be, what's Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator for Notre Dame, going to do? Notre Dame is who they are. They're going to run the football. They're going to defensively, they're going to play man coverage. I would probably take the script that Texas did to shut down Jeremiah Smith, and I would say Ohio State probably hasn't seen a secondary like Notre Dame's. Again, they play a lot of man coverage. I'm not a man coverage guy. Even in high school, I am not a man coverage guy. I'm a zone guy. I like zone blitzing. I'm not a big man guy at all. And Notre Dame is. So I don't think they're going to get away from that, but I think they're going to have to win the line of scrimmage. If they can get to Will Howard, maybe Will Howard chokes and panics in a close game. Marcus Freeman and every coach says the same thing. They all say against Ohio State, if you can keep it close in the fourth quarter, you got a shot. I think that's the answer of any coach. You want to be, like even in basketball, I used to always say, if I'm within 10 in the fourth quarter, I got a shot. If we're within 10 in basketball, we got a shot. Football, same thing. Let's keep it close. If we're close, maybe the ball bounces, turnovers, drop passes, whatever it may be, you got a shot. And I think that's got to be the mentality of Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame's going to be intimidated by Ohio State. I think Ohio State has more pressure than Notre Dame does. because Ohio State's been a 2-touchdown favorite in every game they've played in the playoffs. And I think right now, the last I checked, the line was 9.5. I would bet you that game's 10.5 by the time kick comes. So they're favored. Ohio State is favored to win this game. And I can already see people saying if they find a way to lose this game, well, it's going to be, well, Ryan Day, another game they were favored to win and they lost. Get Ryan Day out. $22 million on this roster. Can't win the big game. Get him out of here. I'm telling you, that could happen. So let's go to the picks. Well, we got a few comments on it. Let me see who we. I apologize. I didn't bring a lot over. Utica Yeti says $10 million worth of player. Go Irish. Yeah, I mean you're 100% right. I think Ohio State paid about $22 million. Oh, we got Colt. This was one of our former players at Sequoia, man. It's good to see this. He says, yo, coach, you coached the 2013 Sequoia Indians to a playoff game. You rule best A-gap counters my school's ever ran. Yeah, I appreciate that, Colt. Good to hear from you, buddy. Hopefully you're doing well. And then Kathy from down in C-Bus, tell my buddy Jer I said hello. Big Buckeye fans out there. I know she'll be pulling for the Irish out there. I know my wife will be in her Quinshawn Junkins jersey that just came in. It was supposed to be a Christmas present to my wife. It came in a month later. So I didn't get really a lot of brownie points for that. But she still thinks that I'm a closet Ohio State fan. I don't know when she'll get it through her head. My house is really split, and I'm probably going to put it up behind me. So that Ohio State, Michigan, I got to point this way. That sign my daughter made me that. She drew that herself. So I have that back there. We actually have, and I didn't put it up yet. And I'm looking left, and you guys can't see it, but I have the house divided flag, the Michigan Ohio State flag, which I want to put it outside my house, but I'm going to try to put it up behind me. But my house is really split. My son's a big Michigan fan. He'll have his jersey on when they play each other. I'm not a huge jersey guy. I have 2 Michigan jerseys. I've wore the white Michigan jersey for the last 4 years because now I'm superstitious. I wear the jersey once a year. It's always for the game. My son is a Michigan fan, and my daughter is an Ohio State fan, of course, right? And the other day, my daughter, we were at my parents' house, and she comes out, and Santa Claus brought her an Ohio State cheerleading outfit, who my daughter's not a cheerleader. My daughter plays basketball, softball, and soccer. I don't think my daughter's going to be a cheerleader, but if she is, I'll support her. She's too crazy to be a cheerleader. But she comes out in her Ohio State cheerleading outfit, which was kind of cute. I will say that. And then at night, she's got 4 stuffed animals that she sleeps with. One of them is a Brutus, the Buckeye mascot, Stuffy. So what happens is, like, when I go upstairs, when she goes to bed, she'll go lay with my wife, who goes to bed early because my wife gets up early. And then when I go to bed, I pick my daughter up, I put her in her bed. And then later in the middle of the night, there's times my daughter comes back in our bed, and guess who she brings with her? Brutus. And I always tell her, Madison, I don't want Brutus in here. I can't look at Brutus. Like, joking. It's a stuffed animal. So I think it's kind of cute. But my house really is divided. So my son will root for Notre Dame on Monday night. My wife and my daughter will root for Ohio State. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to root for Notre Dame because I just don't want to hear my wife have bragging rights say we won the national championship. But I think what's pretty cool is I could say, well, the Big Ten won it back-to-back years, which I think is great for the Big Ten, right? Michigan wins it last year, maybe Ohio State this year. But how great of a story would it be if this Notre Dame team finds a way? David versus Goliath, double-digit underdog, short staff because they're all banged up. How about if they find a way to win one more stinking game against the best team in the country? And people have asked me this question, and I'll end it here. They've asked me about Riley Leonard, and they said, what are your thoughts on Riley Leonard? And I think any coach at any level will say this about a guy like Riley Leonard, even a high school kid. As a coach, I want a winner. I want a kid that knows how to win the right way, who does everything you ask him to do, great leader on and off the field, toughness, just finds a way to battle back, finds a way to get through adversity. Like, that's what I want as a coach at any level. Because I've always said this, you can win games with a lot of talent, and it doesn't impress me. Even high school coaches today. So if there's high school coaches watching, I'm not impressed by coaches that have a lot of talent and win games. What I'm impressed with is I get more impressed by the high school coaches to this day, colleges that have average players, not the 5 stars, maybe the 3-star kids, maybe even the 2-star kids that didn't get recruited by the big schools and win games. And I always say this personally, and I don't know if Colt's still listening to me, but, when my dad was at Waterville and even myself at Sequoia, we had great kids. We had fantastic kids. And I remember we were out one night on a Friday night after a game and, coming back into Rome, and there was some coaches that came up to my dad and I that said, you guys have won games with, good kids. Not great kids. And what I mean by that is talent-wise. We always had kids that played their asses off for us, which, again, meant something to me because I always say personally, my best job coaching, I know Colt's first year, I think he's talking about the 2013 team where Sequoia had a winning season in like 10 or 12 years. And my first year there, I think we went 5-3. We went to the playoffs, and I thought we had a really good team to win a sectional title. We got beat to West Canada in a really close game. We beat Dodgeville that year at Dodgeville on their field, which was the first time in a long time. But I've always said that, like, a coach that can find a way to win games with kids like that really meant something to me. So when I look at Riley Leonard, and people again say, what's this kid do? He's not flashy. He's not going to throw for 300 yards. He's just a winner. He's like his head coach. Marcus Freeman is a winner. And that's the only reason why I firmly believe that I think Notre Dame can beat Ohio State. Just because of that mentality, I think they can beat Ohio State. Will it happen? I don't think so. I still think Ohio State should probably beat them by 2 touchdowns. I think they're the better team. But sometimes the better team doesn't win. But we'll see who wins on Monday night. So I'm going to go with the Buckeyes. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show tonight. I got a really big announcement coming tomorrow. I'm going to release a press release. I'm doing a mental health podcast for mental health and sports. I'll have 2 administrators. I'll release their bios from Colgate University. That's going to join me. My sister's going to join me too on that show. I think it's going to be a really popular show. It's an important show. I think everybody should watch it when we talk about mental health, not just sports, but in general. So I'm going to be announcing that here tomorrow. I'll introduce the guests tomorrow. But we're looking at the end of January for that. So make sure you stay tuned for that. I'll make sure I get that. I think I'm shooting for, I think I said January 29th for that show. So stay tuned for that. But we'll probably do one more of these Choctaw. I'll probably recap the season next week, give out some of my awards from the season and a little bit more. So stay tuned for that as well. Again, thanks for following all my shows. The Rock Pile has meant a lot to me to have the following that I have, and I appreciate everybody out there on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. And then if you're on the podcast, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, I really appreciate everybody for tuning in to listen. So I hope you enjoyed this show tonight. I always say the Rock Pile is where dreams become reality. Have a good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight to the Rock Pile.
This has been the Rock Pile Podcast. This is where you come for authentic conversations with athletes, coaches, teams, business leaders, and so much more. It's our passion to dive deep into the highs, the lows, and the obstacles that shape incredible stories of resilience and triumph. Right. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcast. See you next time